Hi, my name's Aston, and I'll be presenting on urban and rural differences in childhood and adolescent obesity in the United States, a systematic review and meta-analysis. The study population were adolescents 2 to 19 diagnosed with obesity. The question the researchers really wanted to find is there any difference between rural populations in children with obesity and urban populations in children with obesity? So basically, they wanted to see if there are higher obesity rates in rural kids or urban kids. Methodology. So it was a systematic review and a meta-analysis. So they found over 300 articles initially and narrowed it down to 10. 10 were looked at in the systematic review, and only 5 were looked at in the meta-analysis. But in that meta-analysis, they had about 75,000 participants to review. The biggest limitation in this study could be the possible misclassification of suburban children. They used a bunch of different codes based on the articles that they found to distinguish between urban and rural populations, but that suburban population sort of gets lost in the shuffle and may have been misassigned to urban populations or to rural populations. When suburban children really do have a different life than rural populations or urban populations. That's the biggest limitation that they found with their study, because there's no really distinguishing factor between suburban children and rural and urban children. So what did this review find? It actually found that rural children have a 26% greater odd of being obese than their suburban counterparts. And interestingly enough, when looking at the 75,000 participants in the review, they actually found that rural children usually have higher physical activity than the suburban counterparts, but yet still have an increased chance of obesity when compared to the suburban counterparts, which bodes the question, why are rural children who arguably are more physically active also at an increased risk for obesity? So while there are no direct applications to this study, because it was just a meta-analysis of several studies, there was no intervention group, there was no control group, it really does open an area of research for researchers to look at. Why is there a difference in adolescent obesity in rural and urban populations? It really gives researchers the opportunity to kind of delve into those causes. Could it be environmental? Could it be behavioral? Could it be access? Could it be education? There are a variety of ideas behind why people are more obese than other people, and this really proves that there is some sort of difference between where people live and their obesity. The second major application of this review is where interventions should really be focused. A lot of interventions are done on inner city kids or urban population, urban children for their obesity, when this study shows that the rural populations need to be looked at as well and need interventions to prevent childhood obesity as well, because they actually are at an increased risk of obesity than their urban counterparts. So this can sort of direct future interventions and help researchers find where they should direct their efforts to lower childhood obesity, because it's not just the urban populations, it's really the rural populations where the obesity risk is higher. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me discuss the differences between obesity rates in both rural and urban populations. I hope you learned something.